the book of stories about that came out of the Azusa Street revival. And in this book, talks about what happened is this young man, it's a true story, that this young man, he was a drug addict, he was a drug lord, and this is back shortly after the Azusa Street was happening. It had already ended. And some of the leaders of that day stayed in the mission, eventually, and worked the mission and did different things within that mission, giving food out. And this gentleman met up with a lady. He was in a park, I believe, met up with a lady. She began to share with him the gospel. He accepted Christ right there. She could tell that he was homeless and said, come, I've got a place where you can at least stay and get some food for a while. It ends up being the old mission of where they used to have the Azusa Street revival. And so he goes there, they clothe him, they feed him, and they begin to speak to him. And some of the elders that was there began to share different stories. Well, after he grew up, he took the collection of these stories and put it in a book form. And in this book, he writes about a gentleman that he calls Brother Garcia, that at the time he was only 18 years old. Now, he had spoke with Brother Garcia after he was an older man, and he's passing on the prophetic word that he heard in Azusa Street. See, that's why it's important that we have different generations, because there's some things I'm telling you, I remember when I was young, coming into church, we didn't have to have a bunch of hype. Hold on with me. We didn't have to have a bunch of advertisement. I remember when I was young as 5 and 6 and 7 years old, going around the streets in Council Bluffs, Iowa, with my mom and dad when they were much younger, and they were ministering under a tent. I remember sitting in a tent on the front row while my uncle and my dad was preaching, and a lame man walks in on crutches. He had been paralyzed, walks in, and the power of God hit him so hard that, to make a long story short, God healed him. He threw out his crutches. It sparked the attention of the newspapers. The newspapers started coming to this tent on the corner. See, you didn't have to have flyers and frisbees and giveaways, because when you really get Jesus under the tent, when you really get Jesus in the house,
come on.
see, the American culture and the American church of today, we have so many schemes and scams of trying to get people through the door, when all we got to do is get Jesus in and they walk in. We have tried to promote ourselves in church. We've tried to promote ourselves in Christian concerts. We've tried to promote ourselves in Christian events. And see, you have to do that when you don't have the glory. But when the glory shows up, you don't have to promote nothing. You just have to say, Jesus healed my blinded eyes, and if you come see him. But because the American church is living in the state of the Gadarenes,
Come on. That's good.
Come on.
we have to say, hey, come see our cool music, come see our cool church, come see our cool pastor. Just thought I'd throw that one.
That's funny.
So he's talking about this gentleman who's older, Brother Garcia. And he had been in many services at the Azusa Street revival. And so this gentleman now is passing down to another generation. Oh, if you could have seen what I seen. Oh, if you could have seen what I seen when we was all praying. We didn't even have to open service. All the pastor would do was get up and just begin to pray, and God's glory filled the place. And he starts talking about this Brother Garcia, and how this Brother Garcia testified in the book that he witnessed William Seymour, who was the pastor of the Azusa Street revival. He said, I witnessed him one day given a prophecy that was an awesome prophecy. And at the time, it didn't mean much to us, but it will mean a great deal to the next generation to come. And the prophecy was this. He said this, that William Seymour gets up and he prophesies that in about 100 years, give or take a few years, there would be a return of God's Shekinah glory. And the revival that is to come in 100 years, that revival will way surpass the works of what God did in Azusa Street. The Azusa Street revival ended in 1909. We here now are in 2010, 101 years later. When God says, I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh who are looking for me. Sons and daughters shall prophesy. Old men shall see visions. Young men shall dream dreams. Why? Because he don't want us to miss something. It may not look like anything right now. It may not look, you may not understand what God's doing. You may think God is just bashing you over the head. You may think God is just trying to shake you up. But he's doing it because he's getting ready to pour out some glory that is even going to be greater than the Azusa Street revival. Now you and I look back at the Azusa Street revival and we say how awesome it was if God could just show up like that. But I guarantee you, if you talk to the people at the time, they didn't understand what was taking place. They didn't understand that out of that revival, many denominations was going to be birthed and go across the world. They didn't understand that. They were just 60 or 70 people that put their face in the ground and said, God, we can't live without you. God, we got to have more of you. And if you can use me, then use me. And because they made themselves available, they didn't miss what God. Now you and I look back and we say, awesome things. But little do we know that Pastor Seymour said, in 100 years, if you think this is good, if there will just be some people that say, God, I got to see your face. He's going to pour out his Shekinah glory, even greater than at the Azusa Street. But we have to be willing to cross Jordan. We have to be willing like the blind men. It says, I'm not stopping at the threshold. As long as Jesus' voice is going, then I'm going. Don't be like the lost tribes of Israel that see something in the natural and settle right here. Don't be like the lost tribe of Israel that says, as long as I can just have my swine and have my family, I'm good, even if it means living by the tombs. Don't be that way. Be the kind that says, I'm going to set my face towards you, oh God. Set my face towards you, oh God. Stand with me to your feet.